The fall of 2025 draped Seattle, Washington, in its signature gray shroud. The sky a heavy quilt of clouds that drizzled relentlessly over the city's steep hills and shimmering waterfront. At 300 p.m., the air carried a crisp 50-degree chill, mingling with the rich aroma of roasted coffee beans that wafted from every corner of downtown. Pike Place Market, just 2 miles from the heart of Seattle, buzzed with its usual chaos, vendors hawking fresh salmon, tourists snapping photos under the iconic neon public market sign, and street musicians strumming guitars for spare change. Beneath this vibrant pulse, however, lay a quieter, more somber rhythm, the city's homelessness crisis, starkly visible in the rows of weathered tents lining First Avenue and the shadowed alleys off Pine Street. Amid this tapestry of light and shadow, Keanu Reeves, the beloved actor known for his unassuming kindness, as much as his blockbuster roles, stepped out of a cozy coffee shop, a paper cup steaming in his hand, expecting nothing more than a fleeting moment of normalcy. Keanu, dressed in his trademark worn black leather jacket, faded jeans, and a navy baseball cap pulled low, blended effortlessly into the crowd. At 61, his face bore the gentle lines of a life well lived. His dark eyes, still sharp with the quiet intensity that had captivated audiences for decades. He chuckled softly, sharing a story with 2 longtime friends, a local bookstore owner, and a former stunt double who flanked him at a small outdoor table. Despite his global fame, Keanu had a knack for slipping into the rhythm of a place, becoming just another Seattleite seeking refuge from the drizzle. The coffee shop, tucked 200 feet from the market's main arcade, was a haven for artists, tech workers, and dreamers, its windows fogged with warmth against the October chill. Keanu sipped his black coffee, savoring the bitter tang, his gaze drifting over the bustling scene. Then, across the street, something caught his eye. A girl, no older than 12, sat cross-legged on the damp sidewalk, her small frame nearly lost amid the foot traffic. She was thin, her tangled brown hair spilling over a faded hoodie 2 sizes too big. A small sketchpad balanced precariously on her knees, and her dirty, slender hands moved with fierce, almost defiant concentration, wielding a pencil as if it were her only anchor to the world. Her eyes, narrowed in focus, seemed to block out the chaos of Pike Place, the vendors' shouts, the clatter of coins in a busker's guitar case, the hum of a city that rarely slowed down. Keanu tilted his head, curiosity flickering. Street artists were common in Seattle, their chalk murals and quick portraits dotting the market's cobblestones. But there was something about this girl Ellie, as he would later learn, that held his gaze, a raw intensity that stirred something deep in his chest. He watched her for a moment, unnoticed, as she sketched with quick, precise strokes, her pencil dancing across a crumpled napkin she'd scavenged from the ground. The world around her seemed to fade, her focus a silent rebellion against the indifference of the crowd. Keanu's friends continued their conversation, but his attention was fixed on the girl, a feeling he couldn't quite name tugging at him. It wasn't pity, but recognition, an echo of his own past. When he was just a kid, navigating a world that often overlooked him. At 15, he'd been a drifter of sorts, crashing on strangers' couches in Hollywood, feeling invisible, his dreams scribbled in a tattered notebook he carried like a lifeline. A stunt coordinator, a grizzled man named Ray, had seen something in him back then, offering a small role and a couch to sleep on, a gesture that changed everything. Now, watching this girl, Keanu felt that same spark, that same unspoken plea to be seen. Suddenly, Ellie looked up, her dark eyes locking onto his for a fleeting moment. Without hesitation, she stood, clutching the napkin, and wove through the crowd with surprising agility, dodging tourists and market carts. She stopped in front of Keanu, her expression guarded but resolute. "For you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, holding out the napkin. Keanu, caught off guard, took it gently, his fingers brushing the rough paper. It was a portrait, his portrait rendered in vivid, comic book-style lines that captured not just his face, but something deeper. A quiet strength and sorrow he rarely saw in photographs. The sketch was astonishing. Each stroke, bold yet delicate, as if she'd peered into his soul in the span of minutes. "Wow," Keanu murmured, crouching slightly to meet her at eye level, his 6-foot frame folding with care. "This is incredible. You're really talented." Ellie's lips twitched in a faint, almost imperceptible smile, but her eyes darted nervously, scanning the crowd as if expecting someone to appear. Before Keanu could ask her name or offer a kind word, she turned and melted back into the throng, her small figure vanishing behind a group of tourists. He stood, still holding the napkin, watching her go. For a moment, he considered calling her back, offering money or a meal. But something held him, maybe, the sense that she'd wanted nothing more than to share her art, to leave a piece of herself with someone who noticed. "That kid's got something special," his friend, the bookstore owner, remarked, peering at the sketch. "Yeah," Keanu replied, his voice soft, "a rare talent." He folded the napkin carefully and tucked it into his jacket's inner pocket, next to his heart, as he rejoined his friend's conversation. A restlessness lingered, a quiet unease he couldn't shake. The drizzle had picked up, coating the market in a fine mist, and Keanu finished his coffee, said his goodbyes, and walked the 500 feet to his motorcycle, parked near the market's edge. The soft roar of the engine cut through the city's hum as he rode toward his rented apartment in Capitol Hill, 2 miles away, the napkin a faint weight against his chest. He didn't know it yet, but that small piece of paper was no ordinary gift. Later that evening, in the dim glow of his minimalist living room, Keanu pulled the sketch from his pocket, intending to admire it again. As he unfolded it, something caught his eye, a faint smudge on the back. Tilting it toward the light, he saw words, scratched in hurried, desperate pencil. "Find the clover. They're watching. They're—" The words hit like a jolt, his heart quickening. Keanu's mind flashed back to those Hollywood nights, the fear of being unseen, the weight of survival. "I was 15, crashing on strangers' couches. Feeling invisible," he thought. "Ray saw something in me, gave me my first break. Now I see it in her." The plea on the napkin wasn't just a cry for help. It was a call to action, pulling him toward a darkness he couldn't ignore. Seattle's streets, with their tense and forgotten corners, held secrets. And Ellie was caught in them. Keanu grabbed his jacket, the sketch now a map to a mission, and stepped into the rain-soaked night, determined to find her before time ran out. The rain-slicked streets of Seattle glistened under the sodium glow of streetlights as Keanu Reeves rode his motorcycle back to his rented apartment in Capitol Hill, 2 miles from Pike Place Market, the napkin sketch tucked securely in his leather jacket. The October drizzle, a steady 50-degree of mist, clung to his face, but his mind was elsewhere, replaying the image of Ellie, the 12-year-old girl whose intense focus and fleeting glance had stirred something deep within him. Her comic book-style portrait, with its bold lines and uncanny depth, was no ordinary gift. It was a lifeline. A desperate plea scrawled on the back, "Find the clover." There watching, at 1100 p.m., in the quiet of his minimalist apartment, Keanu sat on a worn couch. The napkin unfolded on the coffee table. The clover-shaped pendant, drawn in the corner of the sketch, caught his eye, a personal mark. A clue Ellie had deliberately left. "I knew that look in her eyes," he thought, focused, desperate, like she was drawing to survive. It reminded me of scribbling dreams in a notebook when I had nothing else. At 15, he'd been a drifter in Hollywood, his hopes scratched in pencil, feeling invisible until a mentor saw him. Now, Ellie's plea ignited that same spark, pulling him into a mission he couldn't ignore. By 700, the next morning, Keanu was back at Pike Place Market, the air thick with the scent of fresh coffee and fish from the stalls 200 feet away. The market was waking up, vendors setting up under the neon public market sign. But Keanu's focus was razor sharp. He retraced his steps to the coffee shop, a cozy spot nestled among the market's arcades, where he'd first seen Ellie. The tents along First Avenue, a stark reminder of Seattle's homelessness crisis, loomed in his peripheral vision, rows of faded canvas stretching half a mile, home to those the city had forgotten. Keanu's heart tightened. Ellie was one of those invisible souls, and time was slipping away. Inside the coffee shop, he approached a barista, Mia, a young woman with a nose ring and a quick smile who'd served him the day before. "Hey, you remember that girl yesterday?" he asked, holding up the sketch. Small, about 12 drawing on napkins. Mia's eyes lit up. "Yeah, she's a regular. Comes in, draws on whatever she can find. Never talks much. Haven't seen her since yesterday, though." Mia's words confirmed Ellie's presence but offered no leads. Keanu thanked her and stepped back into the drizzle, scanning the bustling market for any sign of the girl. He questioned a fishmonger and a street busker strumming a guitar 50 feet away. But no one recalled a girl with a sketchpad. Frustration gnawed at him. But Ellie's clover pendant kept him anchored. It wasn't just a drawing. It was a deliberate clue, proof of her resourcefulness, a sign she was fighting to be found. Keanu's next stop was the Seattle Central Library, 1.5 miles away, a glass and steel beacon he'd passed on his ride. Something told him Ellie, with her artist soul, might seek refuge in a place of stories. He parked his motorcycle and entered the library's soaring atrium. The quiet hum of voices and rustling pages a stark contrast to the market's chaos. At the information desk, Keanu approached Jonah, a wiry librarian with glasses perched on his nose. "I'm looking for a girl who might have been here," Keanu said, showing the sketch. "She draws like this, leaves napkins with pictures." Jonah's brow furrowed. Then he snapped his fingers. "Wait. Yeah. Found something odd yesterday." He led Keanu to a reading table in a quiet corner, lifting the edge to reveal a napkin taped underneath. It was another of Ellie's sketches, a comic book-style warehouse near the docks, with a clover symbol scrawled on a rusted gate. Keanu's pulse quickened. This was no coincidence. Ellie was leaving a trail, her art a map to her survival. "She must have hidden this before she was taken," Jonah said, his voice low. "I've seen kids like her before, hiding from something or someone." Keanu's mind raced. The warehouse, the clover. It pointed to Seattle's Sodo district, 3 miles from Pike Place, a gritty area of abandoned buildings and shipping yards. But he needed more. He called his sister, Sarah, a social worker who'd spent years navigating Seattle's broken foster system, meeting her at a diner 1 mile from the library. Keanu spread the sketches on the table. "Sarah, this girl's in trouble," he said, pointing to the clover. Sarah's face darkened as she studied the drawings. "That symbol," she said. "It's tied to a fake nonprofit, Hope Haven, run by Marcus Vane. He's a businessman. But word is, he's been exploiting runaways, using old warehouses as fronts. Seattle's shelters are overflowing. Kids like her avoid them, and Vane knows it." Her words hit like a punch. Seattle's homelessness crisis, with 11,000 people living on the streets, had created a hunting ground for predators like Vane. Sarah's warning deepened Keanu's resolve. He saw himself in Ellie, a kid fighting to be seen, using art to hold on to hope. At 16, he'd sketched dreams of stardom in a notebook, a lifeline through dark days. Ellie's clover was her version of that notebook, a cry for someone to notice. "I'm going to find her," Keanu told Sarah, his voice steady but fierce. She hesitated, her eyes worried. "Keanu, Vane's dangerous. His people watch the streets. Be careful." He nodded, but the urgency in his chest burned hotter. Back at his apartment, Keanu studied the sketches again, mapping the warehouse's location near the Sodo docks, 500 feet from the waterfront. The clover symbol tied it all together. Ellie's pendant, her plea, Vane's operation. He grabbed his jacket, the sketches tucked inside, and headed out. The rain, now a steady pour. Before leaving, Keanu texted Mia and Jonah, forming a small team to keep watch for more of Ellie's clues. Their willingness to help, sparked by a shared outrage at kids like Ellie being forgotten, gave him strength. This wasn't just his fight, it was Seattle's, a city of coffee shops and dreamers that could still rally for one of its own. As he rode towards Sodo, 3 miles away, the clover pendant in Ellie's sketch felt like a beacon. She'd been resourceful, brave. Leaving breadcrumbs in a city that had overlooked her, Keanu wouldn't let her down. The warehouse loomed ahead, a rusted hulk under Seattle's gray sky, and Keanu knew the real battle was about to begin. The Seattle dawn broke gray and relentless, the drizzle coating Keanu Reeves's leather jacket as he rode his motorcycle back to Pike Place Market at 700 a.m. on October 26, 2025. The 2-mile journey from his Capitol Hill apartment felt heavier now. The weight of Ellie's napkin sketch, its desperate plea. Find the clover. They're watching burning in his pocket. At 61, Keanu's dark eyes held a quiet fire, fueled by a memory of his own teenage years in Hollywood, scribbling dreams in a notebook to survive. Ellie, the 12-year-old girl whose comic book-style portrait had captured his soul, was out there. Her clover-shaped pendant, a beacon in a city that too often forgot its most vulnerable. Seattle's homelessness crisis, with tents stretching half a mile along First Avenue, was a stark reminder of the stakes. Keanu parked 200 feet from the coffee shop where he'd met Ellie, the neon public market sign flickering in the morning mist, and began his search, determined to follow her trail before it went cold. The market was already stirring, vendors shouting over the clatter of crates and the hum of early tourists. Keanu wove through the crowd, his baseball cap pulled low, blending in despite his fame. He returned to the coffee shop, its windows still fogged from the 50-degree chill outside. Inside, he found Mia, the barista with a nose ring who'd recognized Ellie's napkin sketches the day before. "Any sign of her?" Keanu asked, his voice low but urgent, holding up the sketch of himself with the clover pendant in the corner. Mia shook her head, wiping down the counter. Not since yesterday. She'd come in sometimes, draw on napkins, and leave without a word. Always looked like she was watching her back. Mia's concern sparked a connection. Keanu saw the same instinct to help that had driven him. "Will you keep an eye out?" he asked. "Text me if you see anything." Mia nodded, slipping him her number. "She's just a kid. If she's in trouble." "I'm in." Keanu stepped back into the market, questioning a fishmonger tossing salmon 50 feet away and a street busker strumming near the market's arcade. But no one recalled Ellie. The tents along First Avenue loomed in his mind, a grim reminder of Seattle's 11,000 unhoused, many of them kids like Ellie, slipping through the cracks of a strained system. Her clover clue pointed somewhere darker, and Keanu's gut told him time was running out. He rode 1.5 miles to the Seattle Central Library, a glass cathedral of knowledge, hoping Ellie's artist soul had left another breadcrumb. Inside, the quiet hum of the atrium felt like a sanctuary. But Keanu's focus was unrelenting. He approached Jonah, the librarian who'd found Ellie's hidden sketch the previous day. "Got anything else?" Keanu asked, showing the napkin. Jonah's eyes lit up with recognition. "Follow me," he said, leading Keanu to a secluded reading nook, under a table. Jonah pointed to another napkin, taped discreetly to the underside. Keanu's heart raced as he peeled it free. It was Ellie's work, a comic book-style sketch of a warehouse near the docks. Its rusted gate marked with a clover symbol. The lines were hurried but deliberate, proof of her resourcefulness. A cry for help hidden where only someone looking would find it. "She's smart," Jonah said, adjusting his glasses. "Knew someone might follow her trail. I've seen kids like her runaways hiding from something ugly." Keanu nodded, gripping the sketch. "She's not hiding anymore. I'm going to find her." Jonah hesitated, then offered, "I'll check the library for more of her drawings. If she left anything else, I'll let you know." Keanu exchanged numbers, grateful for Jonah's quiet resolve. This wasn't just his fight anymore. It was a small team, a flicker of Seattle's community spirit rising to meet Ellie's need. Back in his apartment, Keanu spread the sketches on his coffee table, the clover symbol tying them together. The warehouse was in Sodo, 3 miles from Pike Place, a gritty district of abandoned buildings and shipping yards along the waterfront. But he needed more context. He called his sister, Sarah, a social worker who'd spent a decade fighting for Seattle's kids. They met at a diner 1 mile from the library, the smell of greasy hash browns and coffee grounding their tense conversation. Keanu slid the sketches across the table. "Sarah, this girl's in deep trouble. This clover, it's a lead." Sarah's face tightened as she studied the warehouse drawing. "That symbol," she said, her voice low. "It's tied to Hope Haven, a so-called non-profit run by Marcus Vane. He's a businessman, all charm in public. But I've heard whispers. He's been exploiting runaways for years, using old warehouses as cover. Seattle's shelters are overflowing. Kids like Ellie avoid them because they don't trust the system. Vane preys on that." Sarah's words hit like a cold wind. Seattle's foster system, stretched thin with over 7,000 kids in care, left too many, like Ellie, vulnerable, living in alleys or under bridges. Vane's Hope Haven was a wolf in sheep's clothing, and Ellie's clover was her warning, a desperate signal to someone who'd listen. "I'm going after her," Keanu said, his jaw set. Sarah grabbed his arm, her eyes fierce. "Keanu, Vane's dangerous. His people are everywhere, cops, informants. You can't do this alone." Keanu met her gaze, his voice steady. "I'm not alone anymore." He thought of Mia and Jonah, ordinary Seattleites stepping up, reflecting the city's heart, a community that, when pushed, rallied for its own. Keanu returned to Sodo, 500 feet from the waterfront, where the warehouse loomed like a forgotten relic, its rusted gate bearing the clover symbol from Ellie's sketch. The rain had stopped, but the air was heavy, the 55-degree evening thick with tension. He texted Mia and Jonah to stay vigilant for more clues, their commitment fueling his resolve. Ellie's sketches weren't just art, they were a map, a testament to her courage. Keanu saw himself in her, a kid who'd once used a notebook to dream beyond the streets. Now, her clover was his guide, and he wouldn't stop until he found her. As he scouted the warehouse, the shadows seemed to watch back. Vane's men likely close. Keanu's heart pounded, but his promise to Ellie burned brighter. The search was no longer his alone. Seattle was waking up, and the fight for Ellie's life had begun. Under the heavy Seattle sky, Keanu Reeves crouched in the shadows, 500 feet from the waterfront, the Sodo warehouse looming like a rusted beast against the 55-degree night air on October 26, 2025. The drizzle had stopped, but the damp clung to his leather jacket as he scanned the abandoned site, 3 miles from Pike Place Market. The clover symbol, spray-painted in fading green on the rusted gate, confirmed this was the place Ellie's sketches had led him to, a trap set by Marcus Vane. the corrupt businessman behind the fake nonprofit Hope Haven. Keanu's heart pounded. Ellie's desperate plea, find the clover. Their watching echoing in his mind. At 61, his own teenage years of scraping by in Hollywood fueled his resolve. He'd been invisible once, saved by a mentor's kindness. And now Ellie, the 12-year-old girl whose comic book sketches had called him to action, needed him to be her lifeline. Slipping through a gap in the gate, Keanu moved silently, his boots muffled on the cracked asphalt, every sense sharpened for the confrontation ahead. The warehouse's interior was a labyrinth of decay, crumbling concrete walls, shattered windows letting in slivers of moonlight, and the faint hum of voices deep within. Keanu, pressed against a rusted pillar, 50 feet from the entrance, his breath steady despite the adrenaline. He overheard a voice cold, commanding, unmistakably Vane's barking orders. The shipment moves tonight. No mistakes. That girl's caused enough trouble. Keanu's blood ran cold. Vane, a chilling figure in a tailored coat, stood 20 yards away, his sharp features illuminated by a flickering bulb. Beside him, a locked metal box glinted, and Keanu's eyes narrowed as he spotted a familiar shape inside through its glass lid, Ellie's clover-shaped pendant. A trinket among others Vane collected from his victims. The sight ignited a quiet fury in Keanu, memories of Ellie's fierce sketches flashing before him. He whispered to himself, "We're getting out, and I'm making sure he pays." Keanu crept deeper, navigating the maze of crates and discarded machinery, the air thick with dust and the tang of oil. A faint cough, barely audible over the creak of the building, stopped him cold. It came from a side room, 30 feet ahead, behind a heavy door left ajar. Keanu peered inside, his heart clenching. There was Ellie, curled on the filthy floor, her small frame trembling, clutching her battered sketchbook like a shield. Her tangled hair fell over her pale face, and her eyes, wide with terror, darted toward every shadow. She was weak, malnourished, but alive, her spirit unbroken. Keanu's instinct screamed to rush to her, but Vane's men, burly figures in jackets bearing the clover symbol, patrolled nearby, their footsteps echoing 100 feet away. He had seconds to act, and a brutal choice loomed: escape with Ellie now, risking Vane's freedom to harm others, or plant his phone to record Vane's confession, endangering Ellie further by delaying their exit. The moral dilemma tore at Keanu's core. Saving Ellie was his promise, but letting Vane slip away could doom more kids to the same fate. His mind raced back to Sarah's warning about Seattle's 7,000 foster kids, left vulnerable by a broken system, prey for monsters like Vane. Keanu's hand brushed the phone in his pocket, a chance to expose Hope Haven's horrors. He made his choice, a plan forming in the heat of the moment. Slipping into the room, he knelt beside Ellie, whispering, "Hey, it's me. You're safe now." Her eyes widened, fear giving way to fragile trust as she recognized him. "You found the clover," she rasped, clutching his arm. Keanu nodded, his heart aching at her bravery, her sketches a testament to a child fighting to be seen. Before lifting her, Keanu slid his phone from his pocket, activating its recorder and hiding it behind a crate near the door, angled to capture Vane's voice from the main room. It was a gamble, every second increased their risk, but it was for justice. He scooped Ellie into his arms, her 10-pound frame alarmingly light, her sketchbook pressed against his chest. "Hold on," he murmured, moving swiftly through the warehouse's shadows, evading the flickering light. Vane's men were closer now, 50 feet away, their clover jackets a grim reminder of the stakes. Keanu navigated the maze, ducking behind crates and slipping through narrow gaps, his 6-foot frame moving with the stealth of his stuntman days. Ellie clung to him, her breath shallow but steady, her trust fueling his resolve. as they neared the exit. 100 feet from the gate, a shout rang out. Vane's men had spotted them. "Stop him," a voice bellowed. Footsteps pounding 30 yards behind. Keanu's pulse surged, but he didn't falter. He sprinted, Ellie's weight negligible against his determination, and burst through the gap in the gate. Outside, a borrowed pickup truck waited 200 yards away, parked in an alley off Alaskan Way. Its keys hidden under the mat by a friend. Keanu ran. The wet asphalt slick under his boots. Ellie's arms tight around his neck. Behind them, 2 men in clover jackets emerged, their shouts cutting through the night, 100 yards back and closing fast. Keanu reached the truck, sliding Ellie into the passenger seat before leaping behind the wheel. The engine roared to life, a 350 horsepower growl that drowned out the pursuer's cries. He slammed the gas, tires screeching as the truck peeled away, covering the 3-mile distance toward safety in Ballard. In the rearview mirror, Vane's men faded into the pseudo darkness, but Keanu knew the fight wasn't over. Ellie curled against the seat, clutching her sketchbook, her eyes fixed on him. "You came," she whispered, a tear tracing her cheek. Keanu's grip tightened on the wheel. The phone he'd left behind a silent hope that Vane's empire would crumble. "I promised I would," he said. Speeding into the night, the clover pendant's image burning in his mind, a symbol of Ellie's courage, and his vow to end Vane's reign. The Seattle night blurred past Keanu Reeves' borrowed pickup truck as he sped 5 miles from the Sodo warehouse to Ballard, the 55-degree fair, whipping through the cracked window on May 29, 2025. Ellie, the 12-year-old girl whose clover-marked sketches had led him into a dangerous underworld, curled against the passenger seat, her frail frame clutching her battered sketchbook. Her whispered words, "You came," echoed in Keanu's mind, mingling with the memory of his own teenage years in Hollywood, when a mentor's kindness had pulled him from invisibility. At 61, Keanu's resolve burned fierce. The phone he'd left recording Marcus Vane's confession in the warehouse, a fragile hope to dismantle the trafficker's empire. The clover pendant, stolen by Vane and locked in his grim collection, symbolized Ellie's courage, and Keanu was determined to give her a future beyond the shadows. He glanced at her, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, and pressed the accelerator, navigating the 3-mile stretch of rain-slicked streets to a discreet clinic run by Dr. Elena Ruiz, a trusted contact who asked no questions. The clinic, tucked behind a shuttered pawn shop, 500 feet from Ballard's main drag, was a beacon of safety. Keanu carried Ellie inside, her 90-pound weight alarming in his arms, and pounded on the back door. A small hatch opened, revealing Dr. Ruiz's sharp, steady eyes. "Keanu, what's this?" she asked, ushering them into a sterile exam room smelling of antiseptic. Laying Ellie on a cot, Keanu explained in hushed tones the warehouse, Vane's trafficking ring, Ellie's sketches. Dr. Ruiz, a wiry woman in her 50s, examined Ellie with gentle hands, noting her malnourishment, faint bruises, and dehydration but no broken bones. "She's been through hell," Ruiz muttered, hooking up an IV. As Ellie stirred, her eyes met Keanu's, and she whispered, "Thank you." Keanu knelt beside her, his heart aching. "You're safe now, kid," he said softly, brushing a strand of tangled hair from her face. In the quiet of the clinic, Ellie opened up, her voice a fragile thread. "I ran from a foster home," she said, clutching her sketchbook. "They hurt me," yelled, "worse. I drew superheroes to feel strong, to make worlds where no one could touch me." Her words hit Keanu like a wave, his own past nights on couches, dreaming through a notebook mirroring her pain. "I drew superheroes to feel that," she said, eyes shining with awe. "You're like one, but real." Keanu's throat tightened, but he smiled. "You're the hero, kid. Keep drawing your worlds." Her small nod, A faint smile breaking through was a promise of resilience, a spark that Vane's cruelty hadn't extinguished. Keanu stayed by her side, the clinic's fluorescent lights casting a soft glow, as Dr. Ruiz stabilized her condition over the next hour. As dawn broke, Keanu's focus shifted to justice. He contacted his sister, Sarah, the social worker who'd warned him about Vane's Hope Haven, a fake nonprofit preying on Seattle's 11,000 unhoused and 7,000 foster kids. Over a secure call, he shared the warehouse recording, praying it had captured Vane's damning words. Sarah's NGO contacts, a tight-knit group of advocates, mobilized swiftly, passing the evidence to a trusted detective. By noon, news broke of a police raid on Hope Haven's SoDo headquarters, 3 miles from Pike Place Market. The raid, executed 1 mile from the warehouse, dismantled Vane's operation, arresting him and 6 associates. The clover symbol, spray-painted on their jackets, was plastered across local news, a grim emblem of their crimes. Keanu exhaled, relief mingling with resolve. The phone, hidden in a crate 50 feet from Vane's meeting, had been enough. Ellie's future became Keanu's next battle, with Sarah's help. The NGO secured emergency protection, bypassing Seattle's leaky foster system. Within days, Ellie was placed with a vetted foster family in Capitol Hill, 2 miles from Keanu's apartment. Their home a cozy craftsman with a garden where Ellie could sketch in peace. Dr. Ruiz's care had restored her strength, and a social worker enrolled her in a Seattle art school, 1 mile from her new home, where her comic book style flourished. Keanu, visiting weekly, became her mentor, bringing sketchpads and pencils, sitting with her under the school's cedar trees to draw. "Tell me about this superhero," he'd say, pointing to her latest creation, and Ellie's shy grin would widen, her world spilling onto the page. Her foster parents, a teacher and a nurse, nurtured her talent, their warmth a stark contrast to the abuse she'd fled. The broader impact rippled through Seattle. The raid exposed Hope Haven's exploitation, sparking citywide outrage and calls for foster system reform. Keanu, staying out of the spotlight, worked with Sarah's NGO to fund art programs for at-risk kids, launching one in Ballard, 5 miles from SoDo, where 50 children enrolled within weeks. Mia, the barista, and Jonah, the librarian, volunteered, their early help in finding Ellie's sketches, now part of a larger mission. The program, housed in a community center 300 feet from the clinic, became a haven, its walls soon covered with vibrant drawings. Keanu's mentorship of Ellie, now 13, anchored the effort, her courage inspiring others. During one visit, she showed him a sketch of them under a starry sky, the clover pendant gleaming on her hero's chest. "This is us," she said, and Keanu's eyes stung, seeing the girl who'd once hidden in shadows now shining. Seattle's community spirit reflected in Mia's vigilance. Jonah's quiet aid and Sarah's advocacy had turned Ellie's plea into a triumph. Keanu, reflecting on his own scars, felt changed. Ellie's resilience reminded him that noticing someone could shift their world. The raid, 1 mile from the warehouse, had freed other kids, their stories emerging in court as Vane faced charges. Ellie's new start, 2 miles from Pike Place, was a victory. Her art school, a beacon of hope. As Keanu left her latest art class, 1 mile from the market, he carried her sketch, a reminder that heroes weren't just in comics, they were in Seattle streets, fighting for kids like Ellie. As the first hints of spring warmed Seattle's Capitol Hill on February 15, 2026, Keanu Reeves rode his motorcycle along tree-lined streets, 2 miles from Pike Place Market, the 48-degree air carrying the promise of renewal. 9 months ago, on May 29, 2025, a chance encounter had changed his life. Ellie, a 12-year-old girl, had handed him a comic book-style sketch with a desperate plea. Find the clover. They're watching, pulling him into a battle against Marcus Vane's trafficking ring. Now. As Ellie turned 13, Keanu arrived at her foster home, a cozy craftsman bungalow 1 mile from her art school, to celebrate her birthday. At 61, Keanu's dark eyes reflected a quiet transformation. His own teenage years of couch surfing in Hollywood, a reminder that a single act of compassion could rewrite a story. Ellie's clover pendant, once stolen by Vane, was now her emblem of resilience. And Keanu carried her latest sketch in his jacket, a symbol of a bond forged in Seattle's shadows. The foster home buzzed with joy, a stark contrast to the Sodo warehouse where Keanu had rescued Ellie. Weak and terrified. 9 months prior, balloons in vibrant purples and yellows floated above the porch, and the scent of vanilla cake drifted from the kitchen. Ellie's foster parents, Clara, a teacher, and David, a nurse, greeted Keanu warmly. Their 3,000-square-foot home, a haven for Ellie and her 2 foster siblings. Inside, guests, Mia, the barista who'd helped find Ellie's sketches, Jonah, the librarian who'd uncovered her clues, and classmates from her art school filled the living room with laughter. The scene was worlds away from Seattle's 11,000 unhoused, their tents lining First Avenue, and the abusive foster home Ellie had fled, one of 7,000 kids in a strange system. Keanu's heart lifted. This was the future he'd fought for, a testament to the power of seeing someone others overlook. Ellie, now 13, ran to Keanu, her braided hair bouncing, a clover pendant necklace gleaming at her throat, a gift from Clara and David, reclaiming her symbol. "You made it," she exclaimed, hugging him tightly. Her sketchbook, brimming with superheroes, peeked from her backpack, a sign of her unbroken spirit. Keanu grinned, ruffling her hair. "Wouldn't miss it, kid. Happy 13th. The party pulsed with warmth. Kids played charades. David snapped photos, and Clara served cake slices 2 inches thick. Keanu sat beside Ellie, listening as she described her art school, 1 mile away, where her comic book style had won a local contest. Her foster family's love was a beacon, a reminder that small actions like Keanu noticing her sketch could spark monumental change. A lesson for us all: never underestimate the impact of seeing someone in need. As the party quieted, Ellie led Keanu to the garden, where cedar trees swayed 50 feet away. "I made you something," she said, presenting a framed painting, 2 feet by 3 feet, wrapped in craft paper. Keanu unwrapped it, his breath catching. It was them, standing under a starry Seattle sky, their smiles radiant. A clover pendant glowing on Ellie's chest in the scene. The colors deep indigos, shimmering silvers burst with hope. Her style now refined yet raw. Signed Ellie Clover. Her chosen name declared her rebirth. A note on the back read, "You found the clover. You found me." Keanu's eyes misted, the words tying back to her desperate plea. "This is everything. Ellie," he said, voice thick. Her grin, bold and unshaken, was a life lesson. Resilience, like art, can rebuild a soul shattered by pain. Inspired by Ellie. Keanu had funded a youth art program in Ballard, 5 miles from Sodo, launched 3 months ago in a community center, 300 feet from Dr. Elena Ruiz's clinic, serving 75 at-risk kids. It offered paints, sketch pads, and mentors, with Mia and Jonah volunteering to teach. Sarah's NGO ensured it reached kids lost in the foster system, turning Ellie's story into a movement. Every kid deserves to be seen, to have a chance to shine, Keanu had said at the opening, a vow rooted in his Hollywood struggles, when a mentor's kindness saved him at 15. The program's walls, now covered with vibrant murals, taught another lesson: communities thrive when we lift each other up. A call to action for us to support those around us. The legacy grew broader. The raid on Hope Haven, 1 mile from the warehouse, had freed 12 kids in jailed Vane, sparking Seattle's push for foster system reform. Keanu, avoiding the spotlight, hung Ellie's painting in his Capitol Hill apartment, 2 miles from Pike Place, where morning light hit it perfectly. Reflecting on his scars, he saw how saving Ellie had healed him. A profound lesson: compassion transforms the giver as much as the receiver. A core American value. Ellie's signature, Ellie Clover, hinted at a past untold, leaving Keanu curious about her story before the pain, a thread for future connection, reminding us that every life holds mysteries worth exploring. To you, our audience, thank you for joining this journey through Seattle's shadows. Your support brings stories like Ellie's to life, showing how one act can ripple outward. If this moved you, hit that subscribe button and join our channel for more tales of hope and heroism. Share your thoughts below. What would you ask Keanu or Ellie? Your comments fuel our storytelling, and together, we can shine a light on those who need it most. Ellie's painting, a starry beacon, taught Keanu and us that noticing someone can rewrite their story. As he left the party, 1 mile from the market, Keanu glanced at Ellie, sketching a new hero. Her light, a lesson for Seattle and beyond. Compassion, resilience, and community can change the world, one clover at a time.